Today I'm going to show you how I made my chest box for Rebel pilots based on a few different concepts that you'll see different characters wear throughout the Star Wars universe in the movies and in some of the TV shows. I was originally trying to come up with a Zebarelios costume for Comic-Con, but waited too long to get things done for the full costume, but still had enough to do an actual Rebel pilot, which I wore when I went to the Mosh Eisley party that was on that Friday night. I modeled this up really quickly. I didn't realize that there's a few versions out there. If you go to Cults 3D, there are a couple that look really good. I'm a CAD designer by trade, so I'm always looking for ways to make my own stuff anyway first before looking out to see if someone else has already done things. I have a bad habit of reinventing the wheel way more than I should sometimes. If you get a chance, check out the people that created some really cool versions of this on Cults and the other sites out there. So the way I made mine is I'm making a little tab that I'll be able to slide up underneath the chest vest. I don't know, the flak vest. I drilled 3 holes just in case I needed more than just the glue to hold it down. But the way I made it, the glue actually worked out well, and I can say that after wearing it all night Friday at Comic-Con, it still is together to this day. To clean up the layer lines, I'm using modeling paste. This jar is getting old, so there's little chunks in there that are actually causing me issues and creating a line as I try to fill in the gaps on some of the other lines. What I like about modeling paste, and I've said this in a few other videos, is it's non-toxic. The only reason I'm wearing a glove here is because it's kind of chalky when it dries on your hands, so I'm just trying to be a little clean. But it's non-toxic, it has no fumes that bother me. And this is going to be a weathered, beat up piece of equipment, which is most of my stuff. So being perfect isn't really on my radar here. Although I do take some 220 grit, sandpaper, and lightly clean it up before going on and putting a layer of primer. And then I used a filler primer followed by a sandable primer. After adding the filler primer and sandable primer, this is what it looked like. I believe I did a little bit of sanding at this point on the final layer of primer, but not a lot. Now I'm just taping off the areas that I'm going to keep. I'm going to use the black sandable primer as a base coat for some of the sections of the model. The little square windows there are 1 inch by 1 inch or 25.4 by 25.4 millimeters. They fit most of the acrylic squares that you can find people selling on Etsy. Some of the ones are a little oversized and do take a little sanding to get to fit. The ones that I have are a little oversized. After taping it off, I painted it with this slate gray, and now I'm just adding some latex to the corners and dragging it around. I'm going to do another color over this, which is going to be a white, and then I'm going to rub off the areas where the latex is, and that will give it a weathered look where it looks like the paint has peeled in those areas. This is a quick cheat as to not have to be as accurate when you're trying to sand, because the weathering just makes it look like it's beat up, and the areas that aren't sanded perfectly just add to that. After going over with white, I start to peel off the masking. The green tape is frog tape. It's supposed to have a better adhesion. I can't tell if it's any better or worse than regular painter's tape, but I was given a roll to play with, and so I've been using it on a lot of my recent projects. Here you can see the paint removed. So the two squares are going to be white acrylic, which are opaque, but I want to make sure I can get as much light to shine up. I was going to paint the inside silver, and I just happened to see my little tube of rub and buff. That stuff seems to last forever. So I just put a little dab in each hole, and this is just kind of like giving it that flashlight type of effect, where it's going to hopefully brighten up the LEDs that I'm going to put in this section of the part. Each side will have one LED. It'll be wired up to a little battery pack that holds two 3-volt 2023 I think batteries that fit snugly right in that little pocket area that I have on the backside. Now I should have waited until the rub and buff was dry, maybe overnight, before doing this. You'll see that the rub and buff gets all over my fingers as I'm pushing the LEDs through here. And maybe I should have put the LEDs in before I glued it in the back. Once I get it all wired up, I then super glue the little battery pack in place. Everything's attached just using heat shrink tubing. There's no soldering required here. This way, if I need to make any quick replacements, there's nothing to actually have to cut other than the tubing. And then here you can see the lights are shining on behind. I'm not sure if it shows as well that the rub and buff actually does help. To weather it up some more, I'm taking some rust wash, and I just kind of go over the edges of where the paint would have been peeled. And then it's a dab on, dry off type thing. Yeah, I'm really happy with the way it came out here with that. And I decided the extra buttons that are at the top, I'm going to paint those. The difference between mine and the ones that I used for concept are I have 4 little buttons on the left and right, where the other characters in the show, they have 4 on one side and only 2 on the other, but the 2 on the what would be the left hand side when looking at it, they differ from character to character. So those were the ones that I took a little bit more poetic license in making. The tubing you see here is just a drain tube from Home Depot. It's a sump pump drain tube. I think it's an 1.25 inch OD on the tube. And so when I modeled it up, I modeled the hose to fit snugly. And then I just drilled a hole, and I have a 1/4 inch piece of dowel holding that tube in place. After how hot it was at the party and someone saying something that really stuck with me, I think I'm going to remake this in the future. But I'm going to add a fan so that I can actually have a vent, and then it can actually add air into my suit when I'm wearing it, so that I can do a little bit of cooling. Thanks for watching, and if you're not, please subscribe and be on the lookout for our next chest box out in the wild at the party at San Diego Comic-Con.